Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Leigh-Ann Mole. How are you?
Hola. Good and you?
Very, very good. Very good. It's supposedly today's the day of the national shutdown, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's see what happens. Poor old Ryan had to drive into the studio this morning at like 3 a.m. And we actually said nobody must go to work today just because we didn't have to, right?
Yeah.
Because we're particularly worried or anything. But he had to go and drive all the way in. Let me put him on quickly. I'm going to put you on, all right? There we go. You had to drive. You had to drive in at 3 a.m.
I had to drive in at 3 a.m.
Ugh,
That's
what a
like
nightmare.
last night.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, I heard the stream was offline at like 3:30, and I was like, well, if any protests are going to happen, it's not going to happen at 4 a.m. So
Well, that's the thing. I saw videos of everyone in the EFF kind of gearing up and starting up last night, marching, accompanied by taxis, followed by police cars, lighting candles, torches, singing. And I thought they're going to be fucking exhausted by this morning.
that was my thinking. I was like, they're not going to start off early because they have the whole day to go today. If they're going to do that.
I think they're all going to be so tired. Anyway, I see certain people in the EFF like Buisen and Glossy and so on. You know, people we haven't heard from in so long because they've become boring and like old hat. Nobody cares anymore. I see that he was tweeting 8 hours ago already about students in Braamfontein who were demonstrating already. But I mean, these guys were already demonstrating, 2 weeks ago? So the EFF can't claim that they are their people, right?
Yeah.
Can they?
Yeah, there have to be rules and regulations all about this disorder.
Yeah. And then they're saying things like, for example, freedom fighters, obviously talking about the EFF people. These are the members of your communities. Make sure you visit them when they're wearing when they are not wearing no uniforms. So obviously this person is completely illiterate.
Yeah, because that's a double negative. So
what they mean is, and they're taking pictures of like police people and then saying these people must be sought out in the community. I mean, if that isn't straight up intimidation and or a call to violence, I don't know what is. So I hope that the police realize that the real enemies of ordinary South Africans are people like this. And I think if you are dumb enough to tweet things like that, you should just be arrested. You know, these guys, it's almost like they want to be struggle heroes. So let's give them what they want. Let's arrest them and let them sit in jail for 6 months until they scream and cry for mommy and they ask to be let back into their homes. That's what we need to do. Anyway, Ryan, what did you see on your way through Sandton? Nothing.
Nothing really. I drove through Randburg, drove through Sandton. There's a lot of community members, I'll say, like just driving around patrolling, but that's about it.
Yeah. David says you can't call a shutdown on a day everyone's taking off in any case. All right, Ryan, well, we'll check in with you. You keep an eye on people like Ian Cameron for us, he was on the show on Thursday, and he's apparently giving everybody updates today, sort of community policing forum updates and so on. Leigh-Ann, what about you? You were meant to wear your red beret, weren't you? You were going to go and join them. You were.
Yeah, if it wasn't for my bad hip, lovey.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I've never taken to the streets for anything, and I'm not about to now.
No, exactly. That's my whole point is you wouldn't get me to join a protest for any amount of money or time or anything. I mean, there's no way I would do it.
I mean, the most I've taken to the streets is to like pick up a stray cat or a stray dog, but that's about it. I don't see the point. I really don't.
No. I don't know. It's it's just like some people like the idea of protesting. I'm not one of those. Anyway, let's see what happens, because this is, it's an interesting time in South Africa. I do think there are a lot of people who are very frustrated. There are a lot of people who would be inclined to violence, both, the EFF complaining, protesting types, and then the kind of solid society complaining protest types. We'll see who makes the biggest dent, if any. And we'll obviously try to bring you updates today. I mean, somebody said in the comments here, which put a huge amount of pressure on me. I suddenly thought, oh Jesus. Here, Leigh-Ann, she says, it's not you, a different Leigh-Ann. I'm coming here for updates on the shutdown. Cliff Central's become my most reliable news source in South Africa. Does anybody know what's going down? Well, clearly not you if you're using us as your news source. I'm just saying, you know?
Yeah, no, we certainly don't proclaim to be hot off the press at any given moment.
New.
But rather like a slow and experienced wisdom collected over the years.
Yeah.
But I mean, just from my own scouring of the news feeds up until late last night, I certainly haven't looked at anything this morning. As mentioned, people were taking to the streets already, but heavily monitored by, in this case, it was the Metro Police. The SANDF, particularly in Cape Town, is on the alert. There have been many movements around the country, and certainly encouragement on social media platforms to remove collectible or tires and things that were being collected on the side of the road over the weekend in anticipation. There was already, I saw some videos of burning tires in isolated areas.
Yeah,
but
places
already,
like Witbank, apparently.
Yeah.
So I want to
so
ask a question. It might sound really stupid, but where are all these tires coming from? I mean, do we just have like tons of old tires lying around? What's the story here?
Well, I did see a video of someone who said, a young woman who said, if you find 13-inch, preferably Michelin tires, I need new tires for my car.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, I'm sure that they're retreads or just, collected from secondhand vehicle shops. I also saw that some car sale places had emptied their garages, especially in KwaZulu-Natal, Pinetown. Mercedes-Benz and Ford in particular were the garages that I saw.
Oh, really?
That had emptied all of their new showroom cars and their used cars completely. There was not a car in sight. And if you remember during the riots, and I think that's where they've got the experience from, people were breaking in and damaging those cars. But Pinetown's on huge alert. KZN's like, we've been here, we've done this, we know what to do. You're not touching us.
Right. So if anybody comes up with any clever ideas, the people at KZN are like, no, we know what to do.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are going to keep other things just as usual today. We're going to have Dr. Hanan on in, about 15 minutes or so? No, half an hour from now, 1:45. We've also got someone called Jenny Moore who's going to be joining us. She's on a bit of a mission. She says we've got to unmute menopause at work, which I thought might be very interesting discussion because, she says that women shouldn't be sidelined or especially persecuted because at some point in their life they're going to hit the menopause and they're going to want to take the foot off the accelerator or get more time for themselves and that kind of thing. And I thought, well, why not? And should we care? And if we care, how much should we care?
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting thing to discuss. And then at 8:00 this morning, we will be playing you an interview with two of the people we're, of course, celebrating with our friends at TBWA Hunt Lascaris. 40 years of Hunt Lascaris. We're going to speak to Carol Soames, Group Operations Director, and George Lowe, who's the Creative Director there. 40 years that agency's been going. Amazing.
A friend of mine she's in her 60s. She had a stroke recently, and she's an amazing writer. Due to her husband dying quite early on in their family relationship, she stopped working in the corporate world and started, freelancing. But I learned that she was at Hunt Lascaris about 40 years ago
Wow.
as one of their writers. And it made me think, I thought, have I got the dates wrong? Because that was 40 years ago. But now I realize I don't.
No, it's absolutely right. And I mean, how amazing, that this agency's not only gone on to achieve their vision. John and Reg set this idea 40 years ago of creating the first amazing creative and award-winning agency out of Africa, and they've done exactly that. There've been a lot of others that have followed, but a lot of them have come from outside and then established themselves in South Africa. This one started here, and their work is it speaks for itself, over the years. So, of course, we know them. We're hopelessly biased, but I think anyone who's objective would feel the same way. And we'll be celebrating with them as they, at the end of this month, do their 40-year celebration. Lots of things to talk about. Plenty. How was your weekend? What did you get up to? We're sort of in the middle of a long weekend, so it's a little bit weird to even.
Yeah, it's iffy. It really is iffy. It's one of those times where you think, if you were kind of working in corporate or in an office life, it's where you kind of kick yourself on the Sunday and think, I should have taken the Monday off. One of those like weird long weekends.
I mean, we thought about doing the show from the studio. We thought about canceling the show. And part of me was like, well, we don't need to do the show, right? Because there are going to be a lot of people who won't be part of the, they'll be sleeping in today, or they'll be taking the day off or whatever. So I thought maybe we should just cancel. But then I suddenly had this idea that, like, no, I'm not going to be one of those people who doesn't do what I would normally do just because of this dumb shutdown. And even though, I mean, it's nice to take an extra day off, which would have been the reason to do it, but I thought I don't want anyone ever saying that we were a bunch of pussies around this thing. And I'm not one of those people who's easily intimidated. And even though the show, it's easy for us to do it from wherever because we learned this during lockdown. I thought it was important symbolically for us to be doing the show. So, Ryan could do it from home. I could do it from home. You could do it from home. Here we are. That's what I thought we would do.
But if you're asking what actually happened on the weekend, I ended up binge watching a whole lot of shows. So what's quite nice now is that you can, I follow these reviewers who maybe do specifically Netflix or a mixture of Netflix and, Prime Video or Disney Plus or whatever it is. And then I just take their suggestions, and they're usually brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
But I watched a lot of I'm sorry, but true crime documentaries.
Oh, you really are a glutton for punishment, huh?
I watched this horror series called Midnight Mass, which was brilliant.
Oh my God.
And I'm usually not into that sort of thing. But what struck me was the one documentary in particular, which is called Abducted in Plain Sight.
Oh.
And it's about this woman. Did you realize that in sort of the late 60s and early 70s is when this took place? People really weren't very fully aware of like child molesters or, sexual crimes against children. They knew that there was an uncle who was a bit strange, but beyond that.
I think what happened was somewhere in the 80s, it became a much more public thing. I mean, you remember in America, they started putting kids' faces on milk cartons and things when they went missing.
Yeah.
And that was only in the 80s. That was like when we were already at like primary school, that kind of thing. Maybe I just don't remember before then because I was so young, but I don't think it was a big deal before then. I think people just kind of accepted that. And listen, life for children, I mean, it's funny to laugh about it now, but it probably wasn't funny for some of them. But I mean, like, kids were just basically left to their own devices. There wasn't all this emphasis on health and safety and like being careful. And kids were kind of like, go to work in the coal mines or whatever. I'm talking obviously long before 1960, but it's a weird thing. We've only really grown to understand children and their needs and pay attention to them in a very societal way.
But,
Because people
rightly so.
make their own
Thank
decisions.
goodness.
Of course.
Thank goodness, because there's a whole lot of shit that's been happening under our noses before that. But I mean,
Yeah.
in this case, half of the documentary that I watched, I was so angry with the parents because of how stupid they were and naive they were. I mean, their neighbor, who was actually he had offended before, but no one really knew about it. He just moved to the area. Stated that in his psychological therapy, he needed because he was rejected as a child by his mother. He needed to spend time with a young girl. In this case, she was 12.
Oh God.
In her bedroom in the next door house.
Oh
and
no.
sleep next to her at night, and cuddle her. And this went on for 5 to 6 days of the week for 6 months. The parents let him do this. And eventually he abducted her. He went to Mexico. He married her there because you can be 12 in those days. You could be 12 in Mexico and get married. And the parents said, but we had no idea. And I was getting angry with them.
I'm sorry. Is this a true story?
Yes. And it happened twice to the same girl with the same man. That
is ridiculous. Like, I've heard stupid, but these parents must be the dumbest people in the world.
Also, the mother ended up having an affair with him.
Oh my God.
And these are this is from a very tight-knit Christian community. They all go to church together on a Sunday. It's like
well, I mean, I've always wondered about those parents who let their kids stay with Michael Jackson for the weekend. And I was always like, why would any parent? I mean, you don't have to be the brightest person in the world, right? You don't have to be super smart or massively kind of intuitive to figure out that like this was a wacky guy. And I know he was famous, and for many people, a famous person is like different to everyone else, which is stupid, because often that just gets the famous person to do what they want whenever they want. And I look at these stories and I'm actually like gobsmacked about I mean, what kind of parent would let an adult male, for whatever reason, sleep with their 12-year-old daughter?
I have no idea.
Why would you ever say yes to that? There is no good reason. None.
I mean, they obviously carry huge guilt now, and the girl survived, and she now is part of this documentary series. As she looks like she's must be in her 50s. My math sucks. Or 60s perhaps, but they do look back. They're filled with regret, these parents, especially being in today's world and knowing how stupid they were. But they said, literally, we didn't even speak about things like that. We didn't even know they existed. Our parents didn't speak to us about that, they say. And they didn't.
I hate to break from all this pedophile stuff you're talking about.
Sorry.
Ian Cameron says that as received 6:15 this morning, which is just a couple of minutes ago, some burning tires at Allendale Road in Calfontein and Midrand. However, no sign of EFF members so far. So we'll keep you updated as we find out stuff. And I see a lot of our listeners are also going to update us. I saw earlier somebody said here they'll be off to Pretoria North and they will let us know.
Hermine Viljoen.
There we go. Hermine's got
she spelled Pretoria. She spelled Pretoria North, Norf. Pretoria North.
North. Very nice. Thank you, Hermine. Graham says the movie Spotlight is based on the newspaper which brought to light the extent of child molestation by priests. Great film. Well, that's another thing. Is like obviously during the Middle Ages, you would send your children into the service of the church. And I suppose no one questioned this. There'd be some creepy, weird priest because, jobs like that and teaching, they attract people who are sick pedophiles. And by no means am I saying all priests are pedophiles. You know this, but I mean, that's the kind of business they would have gone into. I mean, if if you had this thing for kids, then you want to be a sports coach or a teacher, or they've proven that this is the case. This is not a controversial thing I'm saying. And imagine your precious child. You're like, okay, well, little Tommy just turned 8. I'm going to send him off to that creepy celibate priest dude down the road, and he's going to learn to light the candles for mass and all that shit. I'm like, what parent doesn't go, there might be a problem here? And I mean, this was happening for hundreds of years. So yeah, I mean, it's awful.
I mean,
Madeline
if you think
McCann
about
in a hotel room and is still missing, great parenting, says Bantu. Oh yeah, and those parents
No.
they've come under huge criticism over the years, fairly or unfairly. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, there were, if I think back to the 80s when we were having sleepovers at friends' houses, in some cases, my parents hadn't met both parents
What?
of the friend.
Oh,
So yeah, I mean,
I wasn't allowed to sleep over though, unless my parents knew the parents. Like if I was staying with a
but
friend,
they'd only met like once and gone, "Hi, oh, lovely to meet you."
like, they scoped them out, you know.
Yeah. I don't know. We've gone to the opposite extreme, but I think the extreme that we're sitting at is better than what I saw over the weekend.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move on. I know you love talking about this stuff.
Please, can we talk about more crime? True crime.
Well, here's an interesting story. I mean, this is from yesterday. Bosasa's liquidator. This is an amazing story. Clute Murray died on Sunday morning after succumbing to injuries sustained in a shooting near Midrand. I mean, this sounds to me like it was a hit. His son was also shot by unknown gunmen on Saturday while traveling on the N1 in Midrand.
His son died. This was yesterday morning.
Right. His son is 28.
He's
been
killed.
Yeah, his father was rushed to hospital for urgent medical care. He worked as an insolvency practitioner for the Sachaba Trust, which is a company that was hired as a liquidator for Bosasa. Gauteng police are investigating a case of murder. The circumstances that led to the shooting are unknown at this stage. Police request anyone who has information to please contact the Crime Stop line. I mean, what a story, right?
No,
because
it's really horrible.
We know Bosasa and all their involvement in bribery and corruption and fraud, and they've been testifying at the Zondo Commission, and we've actually had the guys on the show who've been intimately involved in this story from the get-go. So I think when you hear about these things, there are some jobs that you probably don't want in South Africa, and I would say doing anything with Bosasa or the Guptas, or probably not a good idea.
Well, someone's got to do it, and I think I don't know how I would deal with the fact that I was the target of the hit and my child was killed instead. I mean, that's really heavy.
Awful. No, that's just disgusting. It's almost the end of March already, which means like it should be autumn, and I'm just looking out of the window here, and I do see like yellow leaves on the trees, and it makes me a little bit sad inside, Leigh-Ann. I have to tell you, I hate fucking autumn. I mean, I obviously hate winter more, but I hate autumn. There are a lot of people who think it's beautiful and it's so pretty, autumn's so lovely. I'm not one of those people.
Yeah, my skin starts to itch just at the mere thought, and also the thought of how much gas and electricity we're going to have to use to keep warm. But anyway,
did you notice that they switched off load shedding over the weekend? There was a stage where there wasn't. I was like, wow, this is how it used to feel. This is how it used to feel back in the days, back in those those halcyon days we used to have electricity.
Every time I open the fridge or push down the toaster button or the kettle button, it works. I'm like, what?
Like, what is this? Yeah.
This is crazy. When is load shedding going to happen, man? Damn it.
How did we get into the dark ages and actually remember what it was like in classical antiquity? There's a lot to talk about there as well, but we're not going to be moaning and bitching about load shedding, which has become almost
just quickly, they've done it because of the EFF protest, right? I mean, the protest's number one thing on the list is they want to protest against load shedding.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's very difficult to figure out what's going on here. I mean, it shows you that they can switch it on if they need to. And it sends completely the wrong signals. I see that Mapello did what I suggested on Thursday. I went on the show with Pumi on Thursday morning after watching All Quiet on the Western Front the night before. What an amazing movie, says Mapello. The spatial audio is very good. Well, yeah, I just watched it on my laptop, so I suppose I should have really watched it with proper sound and everything, because it would have been even more amazing. But what a movie. And then I don't know what's going around at the moment, but my sister and her boyfriend were here for lunch yesterday, and they said to me they were watching 1917, which is also a World War I movie, more recently made too, and they said it was brilliant. So, there's obviously something in my family at the moment. We're watching all this like war shit. I think it's my dad. He loves this stuff. I mean, it's his favorite thing. So maybe it's kind of trickled down into my sister and I. I don't think my brother's into this stuff. All right. So we want your updates too this morning. Let us know where you are and what you're up to. Vilmich says, Basasa was a snake pit. Gavin Watson's car accident was also very suspicious. Yeah, I remember he went missing, and then they found him dead near the airport in his car.
Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
Right? I mean, really, really odd. Chulu says, sorry, guys, I'm looking for Julius. Has anyone seen him or knows his whereabouts? Yeah.
I was kind of wondering what he was doing yesterday at about sunset. Yeah, I was like, if I had organized, sorry, go.
There was a meme going around of someone holding up a sign at the robots. You know how they like hold up signs saying no job, painting, whatever. This one said, I will mur Julius Malema for money.
She's like,
well, there's a cause some people would give money to.
Fight violence with violence.
Right. What were you saying?
I was just wondering what he was doing yesterday at about sunset time. I mean, if I had have organized this national shutdown, yes, months ago, I'd be like a bit nervous. Like, is everyone going to turn up? Do I need to check the guest list? Have I catered for everyone?
Yeah.
What was he thinking?
Yeah. Well, apparently it's raining in Cape Town. That's what people are telling me, which means that it's going to be difficult for them to muster up the numbers that they need. I mean, we've also got to remember, like, a lot of people in South Africa are just very lazy. So there may not be as much action in some places because people are damned lazy. And considering, youth unemployment is at the levels it is, there's a lot of people who have the time, but they might just not have the energy to actually get up and do anything about it. So we'll have to see. They flippin' switched off our water, says Andy. So despite all the electricity, you just had so much electricity over the weekend. Everybody had just too much. There was too much to be used. Despite that, switched off.
Electrifying.
Yeah, unbelievable. All right, so listen. Before we get to a few more headlines here, I do want to let Leigh-Ann tell us some. This is quite an interesting thing that she's got here. She's found a thread on Reddit. Now, I don't know Reddit. I haven't used Reddit before. I mean, I know what it is because we've covered it in the news, but I certainly don't have like Reddit on my phone or on my laptop. And apparently people post these threads there and then everybody joins in. It's like one of the biggest, sites stroke apps in the world. And obviously people share all kinds of things. There's recipes and, like DIY tips and all kinds of stupid shit. You found a thread where people have gone in with the express purpose of anonymously confessing their deepest, darkest secrets. And I suppose for some people, this is like the most cathartic thing you can do. So I wanted to bring this in before we go to Dr. Hanan, because he might have something to say about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the thread, the Reddit threads are, or subreddits, they call them, are organized by r/ and then a keyword. And this one's confession, the confession subreddit.
Ooh.
It's massively popular, with nearly 5.3 million members, and it's a safe place for everyone to like admit your wrongdoings and acknowledge your guilt, alleviate your conscience. So at any point in time, you can go on and read people's deepest confessions, and you don't have to be someone who is interested in other people. You just get started on this and you realize what people are walking around holding inside themselves. For instance, there's some that you're going to hate. So as I flip through these, I'm just like, okay, so there's this woman.
Don't do it on my account. I mean, if they're interesting ones, go for it. Don't worry about me.
There's a woman who gives her 3-year-old son counterfeit fast food. So basically, when they go to McDonald's, for instance, she saves the Happy Meal boxes and all the wrappers, and she reuses them, serving him microwave chicken nuggets and oven French fries. She even throws in the ketchup packets and the little toys that he'd forgotten.
I think that's
sell
so
the lie.
Clever. That's so clever, but it's so much work.
She says he loves it, and I'm not sorry.
Wow.
There's something here that I remember Damon doing when we were in the 5FM studio. This person says, I trash my co-workers' mugs and dishes when they leave them soaking in the community sink. He used to do that. He'd come in the morning and just throw all the mugs in the bin.
Oh yeah, because people didn't wash them, and it would be such a disgrace. Like we'd be the first show in the morning, and then obviously people would, they left this mess anyway.
Yeah, but then it gets like, quite saucy, and quite interesting. So there's someone who says,
these are the ones that I was more interested in. So get to those.
There's someone who says, I'm dying, but I haven't told anyone. This person is like way into their cancer treatment, and they've just kind of made arrangements around their death. They've already kind of tied up their assets and got everything ready without telling anyone, because they'd just rather have their last moments filled with happiness than people worrying about them.
Okay. It's quite a, that's not the happy sort of, this is a fun, see, this is quite serious shit.
Yeah. There's someone who says, my wife thinks I take my daughter or our daughter to dancing classes, but I actually take her to an MMA gym.
That's cool. All right.
She's been doing that for like 2 years.
Epic. But is it a good idea to lie about shit like that inside your relationship or with the mother of your kid? Like, I think there's probably a place where you could just eventually, after 3 months, just break it to her, like, hey, by the way, I'm taking the daughter here.
This one I really identify with. I sold fake drugs. At a party in high school, I found a bottle of vitamin C pills in the bathroom and decided to tell the other drunk kids that it was ecstasy and sold it to them for $20 a pill. I ended up leaving with about $200.
All right, that's good. And no one gets hurt.
I made my brother think he has alopecia for the last 15 years.
Oh, no.
But he regrets it to this day. When he was 15, he got his first job and started to save some money. So his brother would sneak into the bathroom and use the things that he was now able to buy, like his salon brand shampoo.
Right.
And this drove him insane. His parents said, just learn to share. But he was over it, and he bought hair removal cream and mixed this into the shampoo bottle. He did give him a verbal warning not to use this new shampoo bottle, but his brother stole it anyway. And after a few days, his hair started to fall out and bald patches started to appear.
Oh no! That's just very.
He says his hair did grow back, but I recently found out that he's still using special shampoo to prevent another alopecia flare up. It's been 15 years.
That's horrible, man. I would be. We spoke about this on the show on Friday because we were talking about whether your baldness. Simpiwe has this wacky theory that your baldness comes from if your index finger is shorter than your ring finger as a man. Okay, as a woman, it doesn't matter. And then we got into a whole thing because Ben said, well, apparently it comes from your mother's side of the family, or so people, there are a lot of people who are very uptight about this stuff. Imagine actually making your brother bald. That's just, surely there are other ways.
When you're 15, you have no feelings regarding how that person's going to feel for the rest of their life. Absolute disregard.
Oh my God. All right. These don't sound so bad, I have to say, except for that suicide one. That's pretty awful. But the rest, they don't sound like they're life-threatening, kind of cutesy, putting vitamin C drugs and trying to sell them. It's not the end of the world.
Remember, I used to put, with my neighbor, we used to take the little perfume samples in those tiny glass bottles and replace them with our urine and put them in the neighbors' post boxes with a kind note saying, here's some free perfume.
Oh my God. I don't remember you telling that story. That's brilliant. You didn't like your neighbors very much, right?
We'd sit in the bush for hours watching, waiting for them to come home and open up their perfumes and smell them.
Oh, that's terrible.
Oh God, the 80s, hey?
Yeah. So Ben says, quick update. Not many cars on the road on the way to work, but no protests to be seen. Okay, but you must tell us where you are.
I'm telling you, they're exhausted because they started at 7 o'clock last night.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to get to Dr. Hanan now because maybe we should start off. We've got a whole lot of things to talk to him about. How are you, Doc?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Good. There's no national shutdown for you. Are you carrying on with work as usual today?
So probably 80% of my patients have decided to do Zoom online sessions. They are afraid. 20% are coming in, but the process continues.
All right. Well, I want to start off before we get to the other things that we want to talk about. There's this Reddit thread that Leigh-Ann found where people are making these real life confessions. And I just thought it might be interesting to, just before we tap into all the other stuff, is it cathartic and good to share deep, dark secrets? Is there something about this that is healthy and sensible for human beings? Or are these people just attention seekers, or maybe people who need to vent because no one's listening to them? What do you make of like sharing secrets? Is this a good thing?
So for me, there are two parts to sharing. First of all, sharing is incredibly therapeutic and cathartic. I usually give the analogy of a puzzle. Imagine you have 1,000 puzzle pieces on your lap. It's very difficult to put together the puzzle once it's on your lap. You have to throw it out and suddenly corner and corner, green and green, yellow and yellow, and it begins to make sense. Emotions work the same way. If I keep emotions on the inside, it's very difficult for me to make sense of it and shelve it and compartmentalize it and move forward. If you think about most traumas are traumas because we can't make sense of it. It just doesn't add up. There's a sense of injustice. There's a sense of incoherence. It just doesn't make sense. So once we put it outside of us, that's when it begins to make sense because we gain a little bit of distance and perspective. But the second, opposite side of the coin is, who are you sharing with? Who's calibrating you? It's like me having a fight with my wife and going and meeting my best friend for advice. And this particular best friend has been divorced 47 times and has cheated on every single one of his girlfriends. Who am I really being calibrated by? Who's really giving me advice? Who's really giving me direction? What instrument am I relying on to guide me in the right or the wrong direction? So it's one thing sharing, but the question that you got to ask yourself, who are you sharing with and what advice are you getting really?
Well, we got a little fight going on with me and Leigh-Ann this morning. It's something that we've often spoken about on the show. So let's get straight into this. I think you'll probably be able to advise us as to who's right and wrong, or who could improve and who might not. It is in the left corner, Leigh-Ann Mole, standing up for body positivity And in the left corner, Gareth Cliff, standing up for fat shaming. Yes, that's what I've been reduced to. I'm now an advocate for fat shaming. Leigh-Ann is an advocate for body positivity. In reality, though, Doc, I mean, neither of us are particularly. I'm not hugely passionate about this. I say a lot of mean things about fat people. I have to watch that I don't get fat, because otherwise I will be torn to pieces by those same people. Keeps me in shape. So
You put the pressure on yourself.
Perversely, it works for me. But I do think that there's a funny thing going on in society right here. And, while neither Leigh-Ann and I, nor I, are particularly fierce advocates for either side, it is an ongoing and very, very heated discussion in society. We see a lot of magazines. I saw a comedian just this weekend saying, what happened here in the United States? A friend of his got back from Pakistan. He said, did you guys just decide suddenly that, fat girls were beautiful? Because every magazine has now got a fat girl on the cover. And this friend of his in Pakistan couldn't understand it. And there is a thing going on. Like, there's this huge body positivity movement, which even I can admit some of it makes a lot of sense. And, why would you want to be mean if you don't have to be mean? And there is a certain amount of like general friendliness and care and politeness and being kind. Yeah, that is probably called for in society. And then on the other hand, you've got people who say, well, no, the kindest thing you can do is tell someone who's fat to lose the weight, because otherwise they're going to die young. Fat people never make it much past 60 or 70. And it's worth discussing this with people. So I don't know where you sit on this, Leigh-Ann. Do you want to plead your case to Dr. Hanan, and then we can see what he says?
Well, I think it's important to just position myself in where I am in the world of this argument or this discrepancy. I consider myself fat. And unfortunately, I always have, even when I was thin. And I think it's important to state that I've kind of been on diets from about the age of 11. I was brought up in a diet culture. And I probably messed up my metabolism completely from doing that. I was always trying to lose weight, even when I was still growing. So for me to have this body positivity world come out is such a relief, because it was something that I would never talk about before. I was approached while we were still in our 5FM days to become a plus-sized model. I was so offended. I cried for a week. I was so offended. In the meantime, plus size meant not a size 8 or 6.
Right.
It meant you were a 12. The fact that I went up to a size 18 at one point, well, that was a big deal for me.
Didn't we make we made a couple of really great parody songs about you being a plus size model with big tits, didn't we?
Well, we didn't mention plus size model. We just mentioned the tits. Those were those days. So anyway, I do carry, pardon the pun, a lot of weight behind this.
Sure.
But it is a relief to see that it's okay to be this size. It's a relief and I'm certainly not as big as I used to be. It's a relief to know that you can still be healthy. And again, I'm not an advocate for that. I drink too much. I smoke. I don't exercise. I don't eat a lot, actually. My calories are kind of taken up by wine and a packet of crisps for dinner. But I don't eat these vast. I'm not one of those like mukbang eaters who eat these vast amounts of food. I don't have that relationship with food. But it's a relief to know that you can be healthy at any size. That weight size and BMI are not indicators of health. I'm not a healthy person. But also that there isn't a certain look for health. There's a recent thing with Gwyneth Paltrow out. She looks about 75, I must just tell you, without judging on too many people. She's hooked up to an IV while she's talking about her lifestyle, her healthy lifestyle. Her IV has some kind of rare vitamin in it. And she looks haggard and tired. So she basically doesn't eat anything from 6 p.m. until 12. At 12, she has coffee. And then a little bit later, she has bone broth. And then for dinner, she has vegetables. It's just insane. It's insane. I think I look about 20 years younger than her, and we're almost the same age. So
Leigh-Ann,
there's a lot. Yeah.
I want to ask you. So how do you feel about, let's say, Gareth's position about, well, being overweight is unhealthy, maybe it's a burden on the economy, and body shaming, maybe people that are oversized, and maybe even you fit into that category as well.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Is that helpful to you in any way? Because he says, well, it's helpful to him because it puts pressure on him to not put on the weight. Do you think it could be helpful to you?
It's the opposite of helpful. I mean, I didn't come into the studio for the longest of time because I was concerned about what people would think of the way I looked. And that kind of perpetuates feeling overwhelmed and not ending up taking the right steps to look after yourself. I remember years back, there was a girl who said to Gareth, "Thank you for fat shaming." She never mentioned the word then. We didn't have it then because it helped me lose weight. But
Yeah, her name was
I find
her name was Fat Pat.
Fat Pat. But I find it has the opposite effect. And as far as bearing weight on the economy, I don't think, Gareth, it's really your concern. I think you just don't like looking at fat people.
That's true.
So yeah, for someone like me, it's difficult. You're put into a position of shame and feeling worthless all the time. When in Gareth's presence, or when looking at the photographs of him with his thin friends. You know,
so Gareth, yeah.
He has
Go on.
He has the picture perfect group of friends that go away together.
I know, it's not entirely true.
Not entirely.
So Gareth, I want to ask you. Before I would like to give my opinion, but how do you feel? I mean, hearing Leigh-Ann saying that actually does the opposite of helpful. When people body shame me or fat shame me, it actually does the opposite. It doesn't make me feel nice. It prevents me from engaging with society. It hurts my feelings. What does that do to you?
Look, normally I would just say I don't give a shit because I think that she's just got to face up to the same thing that I'm no worse than her mirror, right? I'm not mean. Her mirror's not mean. It's just what it is. She thinks that that I only have thin friends. I think that she's making excuses, and she could take control of things here. But actually, that's not true because I've known her a long time. And I do consider Leigh-Ann a friend. I do consider her someone that I care about. And to be perfectly frank, I kind of stopped thinking about Leigh-Ann's fatness or non-fatness a long, long time ago. I see the person. And I'm not making excuses here or trying to be an empath because, I'm not that guy. But I haven't thought about whether Leigh-Ann is fat or thin for the longest time. And I couldn't give a shit. We talk like this once a week, and we used to do it far more than this. And I mean, I really do care about her. So I've long ago stopped caring about what she looks like.
Right. So my opinion is as follows. I don't think that bullying has really any place when it comes to human interaction, especially when it comes to somebody that we care far more about the people that we know, the one person that's stuck, than the genocide that happens, somewhere in Africa where a million people are stuck or get killed or get hurt. Because suddenly, when you form relationships with people, to your point, Gareth, you actually stop seeing, what the person looks like, and you start engaging with the person. The question that you got to ask yourself, if you are fat shaming or body shaming somebody, is what's the point? What's the intention? What's the goal? And if you think your strategy is aligned with your goal. So you go, well, no, fat people are a cost on the economy. Fat people, even by the way, in medieval times, fat people are seen as immoral. And they don't subscribe to what is called natural beauty, and therefore they don't fit in. We must get them out. The question that you got to ask yourself is, okay, well, if you feel that they're unhealthy, if you feel that they need to be healthy, if you feel that they need to maybe take up less cost around the economy, do you think that your approach is the best approach to get them there? Do you think your approach is the ultimate way to get them from point A to your point B, to your desired point B? The second question that you've got to ask yourself is, how much control do you think you have over somebody else? And if you think that you have any influence over somebody else, you are absolutely deluding yourself. The person only changes when they want to. And by the way, I see this on a daily basis. People come sit on this couch. One day I'll turn the camera, I'll show you the couch. And they want to change. But I want to tell you something. About 70% of people that come here and want to change still do not change. Because change is so difficult. And even when somebody wants to, it's still way too difficult for them to actually make the change, even if they want to, and even if they know the know-how, or if they know how. So if you think you have any kind of influence over somebody, you are deluding yourself. If you want them to change, first of all, you got to create the kind of trust in the relation for them to actually want to do it, and teach them the strategies and the methods and the blueprints and the frameworks to get them from point A to point B. I'll say one more thing. When I'm dealing with kids, especially kids that come into the session and they just distrust this adult that was whose parents have sent them to this funny looking adult who wants to get through to their feelings. The first thing that I do, without any shadow of a doubt, is gain their trust. Because the moment I start dictating what they should do, they will never come back again, ever. They will never, ever open up. They will never drop their guard down. They will never share. They will never change. So if you really want somebody to move from point A to point B, gain their trust first. Make sure that they understand that you're on the same team. Highlight what it is that you're looking for. Create a framework and help do it with them.
What do you say to that, Leigh-Ann?
That sounds like sound advice to you, Gareth.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we did a thing on bullying last week, Doc, and we spoke a little bit about this with a bully and a bullier, and I mean the bully and the bullied. And I do hear you, but I also think that we've maybe got to a point now where we're starting to delude ourselves, like we're actually starting to bullshit ourselves. I thought Leigh-Ann put the case very well about how she feels about her own self-image, and how she feels about when people like me say the things that we say, which I buy. I mean, I've got no reason to disbelieve her or to think that she's not being honest about this. The difficulty I have is that there are a vast number of people in the world who are actually deluding themselves that this is healthy, that it's good for them, that it's other people being mean, that they don't have any responsibility for this. It's a lifestyle, all of that stuff.
I mean, it's actually...
I don't think that's your case, Leigh-Ann. I don't think you're trying to plead that case. But I think
no,
that
exactly. But I can see, and I mean, I follow a lot of body positive people purely because, you know, it's in my wheelhouse. I think there are people who have bigger issues than you and I out there. There are people who are actually angry at fat people for thinking that they're healthy. And then there are fat people who think that they're allowed to just be fat and they've now been given permission to just be happy in their fatness and continue eating. And that is a problem.
Just like I can't force you to feel bad by being like shitty about it, you can't force me to think it's perfectly okay.
But it's not really, in that extreme case, it's not really your problem or business.
It's like
worrying about if someone's gay or not, you know? Sorry.
I want to say one more. Sorry, Leigh-Ann. I just want to say one more thing. I know we've run out of time, but this is an important part to your comment, Gareth, that I need to highlight. If you're overweight, you know, the biggest proponents of being overweight, or the opposite of body shaming, is, well, it's my life, I can do whatever I want with it. And I take great issue with that, because the truth is, if you're a parent, it's not just your life. And if you're a spouse, it's not just your life. And if you're a child, it's not just your life. You live in a community of people, and your health involves everybody around you. Because if you get sick, it affects everybody in your community. Right. If you die, it creates trauma for everybody in your community. So the whole notion of I can smoke because it's my life, I can eat whatever I want because it's my life, does not hold water. Only if you're a narcissist and you're a selfish person, yes, it's just got to do with you. But once you live in a community and you have children, you have parents, you have siblings, no, you live in a community and you got to ask yourself what's best for the community.
Couldn't agree
Of
more.
course, and I think that applies definitely when you're within your own family and providing suggestions and care for people in your own family. But if it's randomly looking at a fat girl on a plane and just hating her because she's fat, then it's kind of not really your problem.
Well, I'm going to give David in the comments the last word on this. He says, being fat is not acceptable. It's simple as that. It's gross and no amount of excuses and psychobabble can make it otherwise. All right, there. That's how we're wrapping it.
Ding, ding, ding.
You.
Okay, nice to see you.
All right. And
Thanks,
don't worry.
Doctor.
Leigh-Ann and I are going to carry on having this conversation for many, many years into the future.
I'm just going to surprise you one day by coming in a bikini with my fupa hanging out, my azamats.
No, don't do it. Oh, don't do it. All right. We will be back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. CliffCentral.com. I can't believe we already had an hour behind us. It feels like just 5 seconds since we started the show. It is Monday. It's supposedly the day of the national shutdown. We'll keep you updated. We've got lots of people who are watching what's happening there, and we will let you know what their updates are. Also, keep scouring the social media just in case you are one of those people who's justifiably a little bit worried.
Mayonnaise. Isn't it like a mesh?
This is mesh chakalaka, guys, with mayonnaise inside. Carrots with mayonnaise.
Like-
Mesh, this is not working. No. Look at that.
You know, when we started planning this Cliff Central braai, the initial contribution was supposed to be 150, but people were like, no, it's too much. So we decided to go with 100 Rand. And then today, day of the braai, I get people coming to me saying, where's the wine? Where's the vodka?
What did we even get for the $100? I don't know. We got some chips. We got some meats. Yeah. We got one Coke. I did hear some people scream and Mash running around like something was on fire.
At some point, it was feeling a little bit hot, and I noticed that the flame was on fire.
Mash burnt the meat.
Okay, fine, Mash burnt the meat. I don't know how else to say it. Mash absolutely burnt the meat. The pork was black. The chicken was charcoaled.
I found this to be very disturbing. The bum brought some salad. We made some delicious chakalaka. I wanted to add some mayonnaise, but of course there were some issues with that. We had a bit of a conflict. But above all, it was an amazing experience.
How do you guys feel when you think back to 1983, and what kinds of memories do you have? Because it also changes over time, doesn't it?
There is a real power in naivety, in the sense that often your competitors or the status quo says this is how it works, but you enter as the new kids on the block and you go, not necessarily. So just that point of view changes everything.
This week on the Auto Trader podcast.
I know somebody who I actually work with was telling me about the time when lightning struck their house, and essentially all the plugs got fried. And because they didn't have those little red, I don't know what it's called, but those plugs which
Was a requirement by the insurance.
was a requirement by the insurance, and every single appliance got destroyed, but they didn't pay out. And I was like, what? It seems like something that should be kind of at least discussed.
Yeah.
So just read those terms and conditions and see what's going on there.
Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
All right. It is Monday morning. It is the 20th of March, and supposedly the national shutdown going ahead. Patrick says in the comments, apparently in Nhlanhla Lux, said his house was bombed in Soweto. Family's in hospital, but he's fine. And I saw an update of his Yeah. I mean, he's
Like,
just
by who? Bombed.
Yeah, I mean, he could mean that like someone threw a Molotov cocktail at them. I don't know what the detail is. That's all I've heard is what Patrick's comment is. But Hlantla Lux has been a very vocal opponent of the EFF in many situations. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is some kind of targeting going on here. We know, for example, they're trying to target certain policemen, which is just unacceptable. But we'll keep an eye, obviously, and we'll let you know what happens as the stuff comes in. Let us know what you're up to. People are very, very concerned about the braai that we had at Cliff Central with the staff got together and had a braai. And Snay says, this braai is very concerning. MASH must never come near a braai stand again. If you saw the video, I mean, there were flames roaring up high into the trees virtually. And this meat was turned to ashes and cinder. Can't be very healthy. It's
carcinogenic.
Absolutely. And clearly MASH thought this is an acceptable way to braai. So look, I'm not getting involved because I wasn't even there for that. But it did sound like everybody thought the meat was completely overcooked, and therefore yeah. I don't know that we'll be allowing MASH to be the braai master again anytime soon.
Yeah.
You've got to choose your braai person very carefully. If you have a group of people at your house and you're deciding who's going to braai, if it's your house, it usually should be you. But if there's someone who really knows what they're doing, then get them.
Do you know, for me, the person who really knows what they're doing is the person who asks the guests what they would prefer.
You think?
There's so many people who think that braaiing is just doing it their way. I'm going to braai, and that's all they focus on. But it should be like a restaurant where you ask people how they'd like their meat done. And right. I bet you a lot of these people who think they can braai wouldn't actually know how to braai meat to a certain taste or a certain liking.
I just kind of thumbsuck and guess. I'm like, it's probably been on long enough. I look at it, I use my eyes, and then I guess. And sometimes I get it spot on. And I'll admit, I'm pretty good. I mean, a lot of guys think they're good at the braai, so I'm not going to overplay my hand here. But I think I'm pretty good at the braai. I mean, I'm not the best. I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, that's absolutely phenomenal every time. But when I've done it, I've usually done a good job. And I think it largely depends on the quality of the meat and how you season it and how long you marinate it and all that stuff beforehand. And I'm not a food guy at all. But I mean, cooking meat is kind of a fairly simple process. And it's never been, to my taste anyway, whether I'm cooking for myself or for other people, never been a problem. Never been like MASH, for example, who clearly cannot do it. In this case. And I'm afraid if we're judging MASH harshly, it's his own fault because he's the one who decided.
Sorry,
And they filmed it. I mean, we have the video evidence of, you don't want flames, great roaring flames. Nowhere is that the way to cook meat. You want your coal to be really hot, but not so hot that it just incinerates the stuff. And, then you create huge flames and it's not good. Anyway.
Yeah.
Here's something from the city of Cape Town, which is quite interesting with regard to the shutdown for today. The city of Cape Town's law enforcement members this weekend removed more than 2,000 tires that were placed around Cape Town. Now, again, I asked earlier, where do they get these tires? But the more important question to me seems to be, what kind of organization does it take? Who are the people who are putting these tires out? And are they being paid? Is this how these things are coordinated? I mean, I hate to sound stupid about this, but I honestly know nothing about how these protests take place. I know that tires burning in the road used to be like during the apartheid era. It was a big part of blocking off certain roads, stopping the police in those days, and Caspers and those old police vehicles of getting into like certain parts of the township. So it was a way of retarding the progress of the police. But is this still how we do things? Have we not come up with anything new or better since the 1970s and 80s? Is this just or is it some kind of nod to the past? I don't entirely get it. I must be honest with you.
Yeah. I also wonder how these things are organized. and surely it must be through social media, it must be through private groups, it must be through WhatsApp groups. I mean, if you think about the riots, how is it organized? Did you receive anything on your phone saying we're going to riot? Join us?
No,
No.
I wasn't invited, so I'm feeling very left out. Yeah, you mentioned that. Yeah.
Would I get a message saying this is where you need to go and fetch the tires from? How do you know?
Yeah. Right. I mean, I feel very left out. I feel like just because I'm white, they just didn't even think to ask me. Maybe I would have joined. You'll never know now, guys. You'll never know. So
your morning could have been very different.
I know. I would have been up early like these guys in Braamfontein or Witbank or wherever else they're doing their stuff. I mean, it's very disappointing. What can I say? Most of those old and used tires are always available. There are guys selling used and retread tires in the township. I wish this kind of cleanup would take place every month, says Tebogo. Yeah. Yeah, I suppose they also it's cheap, because used tires are cheap. They probably don't cost anything. People throw them out a lot of the time. So there are a lot of them around and they're flammable. Rubber burns.
They're long burning as well.
Yeah. So,
it's not like a firework, because that would be a bit disappointing. You need something that burns for a long time so that all the media cameras can see it happening.
Well, I mean, again, I have to say, like, I obviously sound really dumb about this, but I don't think about protests all the time. I'm not one of those people who's considering this the most important thing in my life. I suppose for the EFF, it is a big deal. This is their moment to shine,
Did you check if there was not a tire underneath Mash's braai?
Well, trust me, when I saw those flames, I thought it was. And there was a lot of smoke as well, apparently. I wasn't there. Like I said, I'm just judging by the video. So,
okay.
Hoodie Dave says, or Hardy Dave, sorry, says, what about smoked meat? There's a controlled way to cook meat that preserves it for longer and gives it a unique taste. We don't have to set fire to everything. Well, you get those cookers that people are, what are they called? Like no, the egg thing that a lot of people have. No, very expensive.
Oh, the green one, yeah.
Yes.
It's called the green something.
The green egg or whatever. That thing is apparently an incredible device. I mean, you can just do anything with it. And of course, there are those very, very smart people who have like the temperature reading needles that you put into the meat to check the inside temperature, the center of it.
Yeah, put it into the animal's arse.
Right, exactly. And you can tell everything you need to know. I mean, all delightful, obviously. But again, if if you're going to be at that level where you're almost treating it like a science experiment, I don't know if you take some of the fun out of it. All I know is I love beautifully cooked meat. And shame, I heard this horrible thing on our neighborhood group with all the load shedding that's been going on, and people have had power outages and substations that cable theft, all that kind of shit. This one woman on the neighborhood group said, I went out last week and I bought our groceries, our meat for the month. And because the power's been off so long, we've had to throw all of it out. So we just won't be eating meat this month. And I suddenly thought, shit, man, that's really not acceptable. That's
I had to do it.
You start seeing ordinary people's lives are affected in the most dreadful ways. And it just makes me sad. It really does.
As mentioned, I'm kind of in between house sitting at my brother's for the month. He has solar power, but his actual fridge gave in. The element gave in.
Oh no!
And to throw away all of that stuff, it feels horrible. When the frozen schnitzels are actually hanging limply, that it's the ice cream is liquid. It's become milkshake.
Oh no!
And and these big dustbin bags full of wasted food feels absolutely terrible. But yeah, for that exact reason, I go to the shop almost every day, maybe every second day, and I buy food just for that day or the next day. I don't freeze things anymore because of just #lifestyle.
Well, I felt sorry for this woman when she put the message up. That's the only I brought it up now. And we've been, the theme has been like fire and braais and tires and all this.
And meat.
We've got to be going here. Dusty Nose says, I'm on my way into the office. The EFF and Julius can suck a bag of dicks. Good for you, Dusty Nose. I'm really pleased and proud to see people are doing this. I see a lot of people are also, government departments are open today. They said there is no reason that they won't be open. Again, if that is the case, then, and I have no reason to believe it isn't, then good for them. Let's go. Let's just carry on like there's nothing happening. Seamus said, the Navy have launched the submarine in Simonstown in anticipation of the riots. Oh my God. Gotta love that.
I just got it now.
Jesus, Leigh-Ann, a bit slow on a Monday, hey?
Yeah. Look, like that fridge magnet you gave me. What does it say? I'm awake. I'm here. Don't push it.
Something like that. All right. Weather is horrible, says Tracy. I presume Tracy is in the Western Cape. So, okay, again, would you prefer, like, what kind of weather is perfect for a protest? First of all, for the protesters and then for the rest of us. I would say if it's very hot, that's good weather because then it makes people lazy and tired and they prefer not to protest. So they usually skip the protest, don't you think?
Or which would you prefer to protest in? Searing heat?
No. Well, I'm asking both.
Thunderous rain.
Right. So which would you prefer?
I take the rain over the heat.
So you would rather go into the rain and get all wet and miserable and
yeah, because once you're wet, you're wet. But you can't get wetter, but you can get hotter.
Okay. All right. I'm going to say, from the point of view of not being in the protest, which is always going to be my case, then
Yeah.
I'd like it to be boiling hot because I think that people get lazier when it's very, very warm and then they skip all of that stuff. I was going to protest, but now it's too hot and uncomfortable and I'd rather be in the shade and, have something to drink. And so I would say that's the best weather for it. But there is a good argument that if you are going to protest and it starts pissing down with rain, that's also going to put out the protest. And also it'll put out the tires, which is good.
Yeah, like Tracy says, weather is horrible. EFF and bad weather aren't exactly good friends. They cancelled their protest in Franschhoek last year.
Yeah. Apparently the other thing about this is quite interesting because a lot of people are talking about it. So over the weekend, I was having conversations with people about this too. People are saying that the taxi industry is very much against this shutdown. Obviously, it affects their bottom line, right? It's a day out of their economy that you're taking away. If there are no people going to work, or if less people are going to work, it's less money for the taxi industry. So they are apparently very pissed off about this and are not mincing their words about it. They are dead against the EFF and will be meeting them in the streets, according to some people. So we'll see what happens.
There were a lot of politically aligned groups that were invited to take part in the process, but publicly declined because they just don't agree with the concept behind it and don't see how it'll help.
Well, I don't think it can help. It's just really, this is political posturing, and it's something that we've become used to seeing from a lot of politicians. Just a while ago, the DA had that march through the center of Joburg, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And I still said at the time, if you told anyone back in 1994 or 99 even, that the DA would be the ones who'd amassed thousands of people in the center of Joburg, I would have said,
Toying in Joburg.
Are you high? That's not possible. Meanwhile, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Janet, agree, love the meme. So Janet says, I'm loving the memes that are circulating about the protests today. So we'll see what happens. Listen, I'm holding thumbs that, number one, and I don't want to be completely flippant about this because I do think that there are things that we must take seriously here. This is a very it's a very fractious and difficult time. And my biggest fear about today, because I'm not one of those, I'm not a prepper, I'm not extremely nervous, I'm not afraid to go to the shops or do my thing that I have to do today. I wasn't even afraid to come into the office today, but we decided we'd just play it safe anyway. I think you have to be sensible. The worst thing that can happen is that there is some kind of violent incident, not only because it will ignite passions on both sides, the police and the protesters, never a good idea. Then you end up with, rubber bullets or worse, and I don't think we want that. We've got a history in this country of very, very bad things happening. Ironically, this day is the day, tomorrow actually, the day of Sharpeville, which is why it's called Human Rights Day. And we all know what happened on that day. And if you don't, you should be ashamed of yourself because it's an important part of our history. But there were students protesting the use of Afrikaans at schools. They took to the streets, and in the townships around Johannesburg, the police came at it in certain places, like in Sharpeville, in a very heavy-handed manner, and there were people killed. And famously, the Hector Peterson Memorial in Soweto is a memorial to that day. Hector Peterson famously was one of the kids who was killed in that protest on that day. And we don't want anything like that. We don't want to sit here 10 years from now going, that was an ugly day in our history on the 20th of March when there was that national. The last thing we want, first of all, because it makes the EFF feel important and like they've got their own struggle going on, and that they, that they're a very important player in the politics of South Africa. And they're not really. They're a minority party. They're not even the main opposition party. This could make them a lot more famous if it goes horribly wrong. If it's just a damp squib and nothing happens, which is what Pumi predicted, it's what Herman Mashaba predicted on Thursday, it's what Ian Cameron predicted on Thursday. I hope those three, who I think are quite smart people, I hope they're right. Because if nothing happens today and it's just business as usual, then it makes the EFF look really dumb. So let's see what happens. Tebogo says, the worst impact of these power cuts has definitely been the fridge contents. Yeah, that's the primary concern for most people. I get annoyed with no internet connectivity. I think that's also a big problem for people. Did you see the linear with the potholes? We'll send the linear? Ruth, I don't understand. I think it's a meme or something. Anyway, we need water cannons, Gray, going hardcore here. We need water cannons and rubber bullets, not real bullets. Citizens have to be disciplined. Good stuff, though. I don't disagree.
Well, that was the police in Cape Town who held a press conference to state their readiness for today. And they said, we have everything, like basically they were saying we have every kind of toy at our disposal. If you don't feel the water, you will feel the rubber bullets, they said.
Apartheid was a problem, says Hardy Dave. The thugocracy is a problem. We can't change the past, but we need to stop making past issues bigger than the present issue. Interesting comments. Ancient Ether says, nothing will happen today. Well, again, I really hope you're right. I wish for nothing more. I'd like us to that's why we're here doing the show this morning, just carry on as usual. We got shit to do. We're going to carry on doing it. Let's all have a happy day. That kind of thing, EFF who, says Warwick. I love that. Slippery Pickle says Malema wasn't that bad at Afrikaans, but he got 12% for maths on his matric certificate. That's probably why this protest isn't adding up.
Oh, dear.
We will have to see what happens. All right. In other stories, I mean, Leigh-Ann has got some interesting stuff here for us. The world's first 3-year cruise starts in November. Now, that's 3 years of your life. I mean, I suppose you can get on and off, right? Because they're not
absolutely
going to prison on a ship for 3 years, even if it is a luxury cruise liner. 3-year cruise. How does this work?
Look, I saw this and I thought it was crazy. But when you start reading into it, the thing is that this cruise, with everything included, like your food, everything, I mean, you don't pay for anything else, costs less than some mortgage payments. Think about that. So if you don't have any, for someone like me, I don't have children or a husband or a partner.
Don't you have children?
I'm sorry, I meant to tell you it was the first thing on my list.
Oh, I thought
just never got to it.
Sorry, I thought you had children.
No.
No, okay, sorry.
So for someone like me, I mean, okay, so it's 3 years. It's called Life at Sea Cruises. This is the
Okay.
first time ever. It's like the ultimate bucket list cruise without having to sacrifice any comforts from home. It's basically your home at sea with the world as your backyard, they call it. They're visiting 135 countries, basically all of the continents. Begins on November the 1st. It's 130,000 miles. Starts in Istanbul with pickups in Barcelona and Miami. It's called the MV Gemini. It'll visit 375 ports, allowing travelers to spend multiple days in some to explore. So the itinerary takes passengers from South America and Arctica. You get to see the glaciers, ice formations. You're then off to the Caribbean, Central America, seeing the ancient Mayan ruins, North America and Hawaii, 98 days there. You get the chance to explore landscapes in Alaska, 23 destinations, including ancient temples in Asia. You're in Asia for 70 days. The longest leg of the journey is for 206 days in the South Pacific. You'll visit Australia, Sydney, Melbourne, the beaches of Fiji.
Thinking about Australia, Leigh-Ann. They're people
New
too.
Zealand, rainforests. You then go off to southern and western Africa, so you get to see the Serengeti, Zanzibar, Madagascar. In Europe, you visit 38 countries. It just sounds
okay. Look,
it doesn't sound half bad. World-class dining.
I'm sure it's not bad. Okay, let me just be clear about this. So I think this is almost like a replacement for living at home. You mustn't think of it as it's not a world cruise. It's like you're moving house for 3 years, and your house is going to be a floating palace on. I mean, here, for example, Tracy says, I can't imagine being on a floating shopping mall for 3 years. Listen, some of these ships are magnificent, and if you're not the kind of person who needs to be in one place, who likes to nest, who likes to have their stuff around them, if you're the kind of person who wants to explore the world, this could be amazing. I mean, having been on these cruise ships before, I can tell you, some of them are palatial, and you can you can have any food you want. Some of them are super smart. They're not these dodgy, clammy cans on the ocean that are rattling around with like shitty food on them or anything. Some of them are amazing, and if you spend 3 years on there and you get to stop in all these amazing places all over the world and get off and go and explore, it's like the longest holiday ever. I mean, I think I'd be keen on that.
I know, right?
It'd be quite
like
fun.
either selling your house or renting it out, let it pay for itself. It's got a massive business center with actual offices, so you can work from offices. There's a 24-hour on-call hospital, which includes free medical visits. There are learning and enrichment classes. There are opportunities to volunteer, and actually you get opportunities on the land to volunteer as well. There's 100% connectivity the whole time to in terms of being online. You can choose the size of your cabin. There's wellness centers.
I think if you decide that this is what you want to do, I think you could have the most amazing time there. I really do.
Want to know how much it costs?
How much?
Starts at $30,000 per year. You also have the option of paying $2,500 per month. You can also get additional tax benefits.
Okay, so we're looking at somewhere around R500,000 a year. R500,000 a year is a lot of money. But if you have a job that you can do remotely and you're earning R1 million a year, this is a half. I mean, you probably won't have to pay taxes because you'll be in different jurisdictions the whole time. So
you're not buying food.
Not buying food. You don't have to waste money on transport. Think of how much we spend on petrol and Ubers and transport things. I mean, this could be a solution to some people. I'm telling you, should really consider it. Like 500,000 a year. It's a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, but that is everything in. all in.
But also, I mean, we're taking it from a currency exchange rate point of view. But if you're earning dollars or pounds, and I mean, in the UK, the mortgage rate, the interest rate has gone up astronomically.
Well, I mean, the other thing is also like you don't have to deal with government. You don't have to care if there are potholes. You don't have to care if there is a good president or a bad president. Lockdowns,
Strikes, protests,
strikes. You don't have to give a shit about any of that
load
stuff.
shedding.
You
The
don't.
only thing you do have to give a shit about. I mean, imagine you signed up for this cruise and you started it in November 2019 and COVID was coming. You'd be stuck on this ship for 3 years not being able to get off.
Well, yeah, that and obviously the other big problem is like bad weather. You know, you go through a few tornadoes, it's not so much fun.
Yeah, that's true.
But I still think those are not the biggest possible cases that you could. I mean, those are not the worst things you could deal with. You know,
you're probably safer being on a ship when it comes to weather patterns because they can pick up on that than you are being in your house in Texas when a tornado's coming over.
Right, absolutely. All right, I do want to turn our attention to something I thought was quite interesting here. So let me get into this with you quickly. Jenny Moore is from Dahlia Menopause Institute. It's DALIAH. The institute aims to learn what South African women in various stages of menopause want, need, and are experiencing. And she is a seasoned brand strategist. She's got an interesting career. She's been in consulting, corporate, as an entrepreneur too. She believes we need to find better ways of doing business to create a world where people and profit and the planet can sustainably coexist for generations to come. So one of the things is, according to her, ensuring that women take their rightful place in business and society. So she started this initiative. Hey, how are you, Jenny? Nice to see you.
Morning, Gareth. Thanks so much. Morning, Leigh-Ann.
Yeah, good to have you on here. So I gave a little bit of the background here, but you might want to sketch this. You said we're in the midst of what could be called a great breakup, where senior women leaders, such as the Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, who's 52, New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, who's 42, YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki, who's 54, Meta's Sheryl Sandberg, 53. They're all leaving their organizations demanding more from work. So what do you think this is? And using those women as the example, tell me why you think that this is indicative of a greater trend.
So, Gareth, we know that menopause can be a really tough time for women. Medically, that's proven fact. And from the experience we see even in our research, we know that many women, have a really tough time during this transition period. And I think increasingly as women are feeling more empowered to make decisions for themselves, we're seeing women, like you've just mentioned, saying, actually, the workplace isn't supporting us. We're not getting what we need. And we're stepping out to do something else, to take control of our own journeys, take control of our lives, and move into a space that is more conducive for our own well-being.
But in the case of Nicola Sturgeon and Jacinda Ardern, both of whom I can't stand, that they were actually voted out. They've been asked to leave by their parties and by the voters in those countries because they're such awful, off-putting people. So I don't know if we can blame the menopause for that, can we?
You can't use this platform and this slot.
No, I'm just saying that.
Or every slot to voice your hatred for Jacinda.
No. You can say this is true for Sheryl Sandberg, and there are probably lots of women in South Africa who also. I mean, so what is the relationship here? Explain to me as a stupid caveman, like what happens with women who are going through the menopause in a work situation? Does work become so unbearable? Are the people at work just not understanding? Like, what's the story here? Like, why should anyone care about this instead of people just going, well, get on with it?
I love that question. Yes, exactly. Why shouldn't we just get on with it, right? This is a perfectly normal, natural part of a woman's life. The reality is that at any given time during what is potentially a decade-long journey, if not longer for some women, you're experiencing between 8 and 12 symptoms related to your menopause. And that starts in early menopause, early perimenopause, all the way through till your late 50s, when you're most likely to be in the postmenopause phase. So at any given time, you're dealing with mood changes, which can lead to anxiety, heightened anxiety, depression, mood swings, which unfortunately have become quite stereotypical of the menopausal woman. You're dealing with physical issues, hot flashes, inability to sleep. You're dealing with forgetfulness. In all of these things all work at the same time on a woman. And that makes it a pretty tough time for a woman to then also be typically a partner, for many South African women, a mother. And considering where most women are in their mid to late 40s in their career, that's usually a time when you're starting to step into more senior roles, more responsibility. You've got a lot of experience that you're contributing to your particular field. And so you've got these multiple pressures. And then add to that a culture in the workplace which says menopausal women are less productive, menopausal women are not useful in my team because maybe they forget things or they need a bit of extra support, so we don't want them on our teams. And they end up being victimized and ridiculed in the workplace for something that is perfectly natural. And if they were just allowed to talk about it, they might be able to get the right support so that they can be productive and bring all of that valuable experience to the workplace.
It's so true how so I'm in the perimenopausal phase at the moment, and I'm already detecting changes, and they're all the sorts of changes that you want to keep quiet about, and you don't want to let your boss know, you don't want to speak to you or let your colleagues know, you don't want your clients to know. All of those symptoms that are starting to happen automatically make you feel ashamed. You don't want to appear as old. You don't want to be put into a certain group of people. It's not easy. It really isn't. And I think we're over those times where we've said in the past, just get on with things. It's not helpful. That's not helpful.
I'm going to throw a spanner in the works here. And I know, Jenny, I know you're working hard on this and you know way more than I do about this, but I have to be the devil's advocate here and go, oh my God, this sounds like hell. I'm just rather hiring men. Right?
What happens?
And maybe we don't vote. Maybe we don't vote for women who are in their 40s and 50s because we know they're going to like Jacinda Ardern and go, oh, I'm too tired. I need to get out of this job. Then let's rather just not let women do these jobs.
Well, I can see why you'd say that, but
very dangerous.
We know that diversity is critical to business success.
Is it?
It's critical to it. The research is vast on that subject.
I'm not so sure it is. I mean, what we've learned is that diversity, when there is a common goal, is terrific, and there are different points of view that are brought in. There's no evidence to show that diversity for its own sake does any good at all. None.
It's not diversity for its own sake. It's diversity for ensuring that we bring the woman's voice to the table, that a woman is able to be part of the economic journey of a country, of a company, of her own life, and that women are able to actively participate, whether it is at a societal level, a business level, or in the home.
I don't doubt. Listen, I don't doubt that there are some things that have been vastly improved. In fact, probably the majority of things that have been vastly improved by a diversity of men and women, of people of different cultural backgrounds, people of different circumstances, all throwing their very different experiences into the pot. But if we look at like cold hard facts, like the military of every era before this one, which was almost entirely male, I mean, they do tend to get things done, and whether or not there's diversity, the military seems to know what it's all about. Again, I'm just being the devil's advocate. I'm not saying that we should go back to, 1700, because times have changed and women have made an enormous contribution in everything, including the military. But there's very good evidence for the fact that sometimes diversity is an afterthought. It's a luxury. It's not actually a necessity.
I think we'll agree to disagree on that point, Gareth. I think that there is vast evidence to suggest that diversity actually is a necessity. But everyone's entitled to their views on that. I think the more important point, though,
understand. I mean, look, I'm just because I'm the only one who's going to say this, and I do want you to explain some more of this to an idiot like me, because I'm admitting that I don't know everything. But it does sound like, on the one hand, you must be extremely thoughtful and considerate, and we must take into our businesses an understanding of menopause and what goes on with women, and we must try to make the environment better for them. All of that has to happen in addition to business, or you just don't hire women of that age. How about that? And then you don't have to worry about any of that shit.
What is the expectation, if I may ask? Not to you, Gareth. I'm asking our guest. But what is the expectation what do we need as perimenopausal or premenopausal women in the workplace? What are we asking the workplaces to do? And what are we asking men to do and understand? What is the ask?
Yeah, and I think our research has been quite instructive in what women are really looking for. And it's not massive accommodations. It's not reorganizing your business around the menopausal woman. It's about the ability to speak openly and freely about what you're experiencing in your life, so that there isn't that sense of victimization or being sidelined because you're going through a particular phase of your life.
Yeah.
You know, I often liken it to, there are a myriad of things that happen as you get older, right? You can your eyesight starts to deteriorate. We don't victimize people for suddenly having to see the optometrist or wear glasses. We don't victimize or stigmatize people who have to have dental work because of tooth decay when they're in their 50s. Those are
what about male hair loss, male balding? You know, and do we just say, oh, just shut up about it and get on, or do we allow them to speak to perhaps other people who are balding? Gareth, I think what I'm trying to say is that the ask is not huge. There's not a big thing here that's going to affect you and your organization. The ask is just to be aware of it and allow women to have a platform to speak to each other.
Well, why don't
if you don't want to just hire women anymore, what's going to happen? How's society going to? Sorry, not you. Your argument.
This is not my position. I just think that there are a lot of people who probably think this way, and I want to hear the best argument against that position. And you've done this study, so tell us about Menopause, the Silent Chapter, because this must have brought about some really interesting information. I mean, there must be stuff here that I think could be very helpful to people in organizations.
Absolutely. And I think, to our knowledge, this is the first time that there's been a study of this scale in South Africa, looking at the lived experience of women going through their menopause journey. And the findings have been incredibly valuable to start to understand what that lived experience is. And first and foremost, I think the ask from women is just to be heard, to be understood, and then for those who need it, to be able to access support. Women are not asking for special dispensation or special conditions. They're just asking for the same thing anybody else would ask for, whether that is at home, at work, or in broader society. I think as it stands today, our research points to massive stigmatization of menopause. And I think this is inherent in a culture that celebrates youthfulness. And we see it in other cultures, in other countries, where youthfulness is typically seen as the ideal. As women age, they start to be pushed to the fringes of society. They start to be seen, as Leigh-Ann said earlier, old. And with being seen as old come a number of associations, like being past your sell-by date, no longer being useful to society, workplace, or at home, and that you must just recede into that stereotypical quiet corner. And we know that people are living longer, people are able to contribute much longer. And so if we're going to continue to push women into a corner and keep them quiet and just tell them just to stay away, then we're going to lose the value that they can bring to society. And that's particularly, think about it, 45 to 55-year-old woman is at the prime of her career. She's got 20 plus years of experience that she can bring to her chosen profession or workplace. She is, a leader potentially in a business, in society. She has, multiple points of influence. And if just because she's starting a natural process called menopause, we're not going to support her and we're going to keep her quiet and not able to express her experiences, and we're going to continue to say that now she no longer adds value, I think we're losing half our population at that age. And that would be a travesty.
Leigh-Ann, do you think a lot of women are scared to even admit that they're going into this, like that they're feeling change is happening? Do you think that, and who are these people who are like standing around talking about, old Sandra over there's going through the menopause, you could see she's getting a bit slow. I've never heard a conversation like this. Look, I've never been in a corporate business, but I've never heard a conversation like that. I think most men would be embarrassed to have that conversation because it's not something that we're thinking.
It's something that happens in worlds that are a little bit different to yours and mine, Gareth. Definitely in the corporate situation, it happens a lot. It happens where at the moment, I'm a freelancer, so I'm continuously a job seeker at that level, where I know my CV isn't being considered because I'm 45. It affects, you look at Hollywood, you look at newsrooms. As soon as a woman becomes a certain age, is she still worthy of sitting in the anchor's chair or being a reporter? In the meantime, there she sits with decades of experience behind her and life knowledge and skills. And all she's asking for is for a little bit of consideration for what she's going through. Which, like we've said, can span 10 to 15 years. It's a long time. And yes, I do believe people are being quiet about it. I've been quiet about it. I can hear in my female colleagues' voices when they've forgotten a name or they've forgotten something or they can't find, they're battling with word finding. I can hear they're embarrassed about it.
Well, then probably not a good thing to be in air traffic control. But I mean, otherwise, it's probably all right. I mean, are there certain jobs that are easier on women who are going through this, Jenny? Are there certain jobs that are much, much harder?
I don't have research to prove that because it's not something we explored, but I would say from my own experience, I don't believe that's true. I think women can continue in their chosen profession, whatever that might be, as long as they're getting the right support. And support can be emotional support, physical support, medical support. There are solutions that keep women at the top of their game, whatever that might be. So you don't have to be a victim of your symptoms. There are solutions. The problem is most women don't know about those solutions and they don't know how to access them. And that's one of the things that we have to open up as part of opening up the conversation, is saying you need to be empowered to make choices for what's right for you through your menopause journey. Every journey is different. There's no stereotypical menopausal journey. Everyone has a unique experience, but you need to be equipped and enabled to make the right choices for you. And that's part of unmuting menopause.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point.
Lower the AC. Lower the AC. That's all we're asking.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like we often have debates in our offices about the air conditioning because some of the people like the air conditioning hot, some of them like it cold. I don't know whether it's an age thing. It may be a cultural thing for some people. Look, these are the things that we're all trying to learn about in work. And I do want to be very clear that we mustn't immediately, because we're talking about an issue that affects women here, suddenly think that this is some kind of, anti-male, because this is how some stupid men start to behave, as they start to go, well, what about men? We're not talking about men this morning. We're talking about women, and we can discuss one without having to bring the other one up every bloody time. I think it's an interesting thing to discuss what those symptoms might be and how people, let's say I'm a guy in a corporation. There are a couple of women who are starting to perhaps go through some of these things. How can I be helpful, and how can I identify these things, and what sorts of things make that journey that you were talking about, Jenny, more bearable?
So I think first and foremost, Gareth, as male advocates for women in the workplace, the number one job is to let a woman feel heard and understood, to not make her feel embarrassed or ashamed to talk about her experiences. That doesn't cost anything.
Again, I just want to come in here because as a guy, what do you mean? Like we must sit and listen to, like sit in a circle and listen to these stories?
No, not at all. So let me give you a very practical corporate real world experience. It's hot flashes are one of the most common symptoms. It's a vasomotor symptom, and it's one of the most common symptoms that affect women. If you see a woman experiencing hot flash, she has no control over it whatsoever. And it can be almost a mortifying experience for her. I have firsthand experience of being in rooms where male colleagues have seen a woman have a hot flash in the middle of a meeting and make fun of her. And that is just adding to her sense of shame. It is just adding to her sense of pain, and it's not necessary. So can we stop making fun of women? That's a very practical way of doing things. And as a manager, more often than not, our middle and senior managers are still men in many workplaces. Can we just have the sensitivity to say, it's okay for a woman, one of my team members, to come to me and say, I'm having a really bad time right now. Can I work from home? Most organizations have adopted hybrid working, and it shouldn't be an issue anymore, but it still is. And those are some very practical things that people can do that don't change, they don't change business. Business carries on as usual, but it makes the experience for women so much more manageable, so much easier. Stop making fun of them, stop victimizing them. Stop saying, well, the minute I see that you're having a hot flash, oh my gosh, you must be in menopause, therefore you're no longer useful to me. And degrading both her sense of value and victimizing her for something that is perfectly natural. So there's some very practical things that we can do in the workplace.
I mean, surely these days, and HR is like the biggest department in some of these corporations, and everybody is tiptoeing around. Surely you couldn't, if you were the kind of mean son of a bitch who would start like teasing and abusing a woman who's going through a hot, I mean, you'd be reported to HR immediately and you'd be in huge trouble. I mean, that's unacceptable behavior, right?
You'd think so, but it's not. It's
really?
Still considered acceptable behavior in many workplaces, unfortunately. And that is the lived experience that women have played back to us. That sense of victimization is real. And unfortunately, it falls outside of sort of the narrowest definition of harassment in the workplace. And people are often too embarrassed to talk about it. I mean, a woman who's been victimized or made fun of because she's having hot flashes during a meeting is not going to go to her HR manager and say, listen, so-and-so was making a joke of me in the work, in a meeting. They're going to keep quiet. They're going to keep their head down. They're going to try and manage that symptom as best as possible so that it doesn't happen again. That's the lived experience of women.
I would be horrified to hear that kind of thing was happening, and I'm quite shocked to hear from you now that this is going on. That people actually will be like bringing this up and teasing and mocking and being rude to someone in a meeting. I mean, it's outrageous. I also think that just being mean in general has become a very taboo subject. It's not something that people would do at the office. I mean, people don't even flirt at the office anymore because it gets you into so much trouble. So I think people are absolutely terrified of doing the wrong thing in the office. Do you agree, Leigh-Ann? I mean, again, I don't have the experience of the corporate world, so this is all news to me.
It's still, I think the fact that you didn't know that happens and now you do is the very point of this interaction.
Right.
It served its purpose.
Well, I think this is fascinating. Where can we find out more, Jenny? Because there might be a lot of people who are listening now and want to know about the study that you've done, Menopause, the Silent Chapter, know more about your Unmuting Menopause at Work, and where we can find out a little bit more about this.
Yes, absolutely. They can contact us on hello@dahlia.co.za. And there's a lot more information, the full research reports and lots of resources available on our website, which is dahlia.co.za.
That's DALIAH.co.za. You can go and find out more from Jenny. And excellent stuff here. Thank you for being on the show with us this morning. And I hope you have an awesome National Shutdown Day and that nobody comes and gets any trouble in your area. But thanks for being part of the discussion this morning, Jenny. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Gareth. Thanks, Leigh-Ann.
Thanks, Janie.
Very, very nice. Well, see,
Oh,
I learn
got me
new
all
things every
flustered. But I tell you what, when they hit, it's horrible. You feel like such a fool. And the worst is it happens when you're in a public place, a pubic place.
Well, if I ever tease you, you know who to go to, HR, right?
Well, the thing is, yeah, you're very right. And I don't think you would be a person to tease over something like that. We would laugh at it together.
Well, yeah, I also think that, there are probably places where men embarrass themselves and don't know what the hell's going on. But this is what Jenny was saying, is you need to talk about these things so people actually understand each other. And you made the same point. Good stuff. All right, everybody. That's all we got time for this morning. Let me just quickly remind you that we have an incredible series going on that we're doing with our friends at Hunt Lascaris. 40 years of Hunt Lascaris. We spoke to Reg Lascaris and John Hunt just a couple of weeks ago. But now it's the turn of Carol Soames, who's the group operations director, and George Lowe, who's the creative director, both who have decades of stories to tell. They are just two of the long-standing people who've helped shape the DNA of the agency's creative culture in the ever-changing media landscape. And while George is familiar with collecting tiny statues, Carol, who joined back in 1986 when there were only 15 people in the business, is the super glue between the clients and the departments. So you want to hear from them? That's coming up next. CliffCentral.com. It is Monday morning. Have an awesome day, everybody. We'll keep updated on social media and all the things that are going on, and we'll catch up with more of it tomorrow, I'm sure. Oh, no, tomorrow we don't have a show. Sorry, it'll be Wednesday. Tomorrow is an actual pubic holiday.
Yes, holiday.
All right. Have a happy day, everybody. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.